everyone. Hope you enjoyed some puck talk last night, but it's back to hoops. Happy hump day. This is NBA Pre-Lock Live, presented by Wilder versus Ortiz, live on Showtime. You don't want to miss that. America's heavyweight world champ, Deontay Wilder opposite Luis Ortiz. He is aiming to become the first Hispanic fighter to win a heavyweight world title. That'd be pretty impressive. Now, I'm hoping for some heavyweight level takes tonight since our whole crew is back together. Adam Kaufman, Julian Edlow, Chirag Hira gracing us with his presence once again.
Hey, man.
We'll talk with Geoff Ulrich a little bit later on in the show. But how are you, fellas?
Can't complain. I had Monday off.
Good.
Now ready to attack this slate, you know. I had a really sick lineup on Monday, too. So, hey, let's keep the fire going.
You cash in?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Big loot. All right, as always, we're here for you, not for our health. So get your questions in with the hashtag DKLive on Twitter. You can also, of course, use the Facebook Live comment section. Just dump them in there. We'll see them and help out. And seriously, leave questions. Don't be shy. We'll take as many as we can in the next 30, 40 minutes. The more we hear from you, the less you'll hear from me. And I think these guys would agree it's a win-win.
Yeah,
It's a win-win. So,
ask questions.
9-game slate. Starts about an hour from now. Bucks in Detroit, Raptors in Orlando. Those are the two 7 o'clock Eastern games. We'll give you a look at the slate as well. It's big points expected from Rockets and Clippers, Warriors and Wizards, both of those in the neighborhood of 230 projected totals. So which game, be it one of those or one of the other ones I mentioned or a different one altogether, where are you keying in on?
Got to check out that Clippers and Rockets game. That's one of the ones you have to key in on. What I really like to notice, I know I've mentioned this to Julian before, but those national TV games, kind of lock in there. They're high projected games. Entertainment value is high. Projected fantasy points is high. I look at that one, that Golden State Warriors and Washington Wizards, and also Clippers and Rockets.
Yeah, I mean, while Chirag's in on these national TV games, I'll go the complete other way. I'm going to be talking a lot about tanking tonight on this slate. And we've got a Memphis Grizzlies Phoenix Suns game. Do you want to watch that game for your pleasure, for good basketball? Probably not, but you need value plays if you're going to be playing on a DFS DraftKings slate tonight. And that's the type of game that you get it in. So, Suns Grizzlies, why not?
Just a lot of competition in those tank games. Who wants to lose more, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm kind of afraid.
Somebody's got to do something.
I'm really afraid Mark sits tonight. Marc Gasol might sit tonight, and that could really flip the slate.
That would give us great value if you did.
Well, that'll be something we'll monitor going forward. Just to give you an idea of where things stand at this moment, at this hour, following players in. One notable guy, that's Aaron Gordon. Guys who are out, Daniel Tice, DeAndre Bembry, Tyson Chandler, Pau Gasol, Ryan Anderson, Brandon Wright, Tyreek Evans, Deontay Davis, Chandler Parsons, Wayne Selden, Matthew Dellavedova, Tony Snell, Tyrone Wallace, Danilo Gallinari, Avery Bradley as well. A couple other guys just added to this list moments ago. Cody Zeller and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Clint Capella and Dwight Howard are both probable, and Malcolm Delaney is among those questionable. Why don't we just go with the breaking news, though? Those two guys that are going to be out for Charlotte. This is a Hornets team. It's riding hot. 5 straight wins. Goes into Boston against another surging team, the Celtics. But that team is going to have some question marks, but great value opportunity. Yeah,
when you get a couple of guys that are real rotation players, a starter in MKG out, Zeller, a guy that eats up minutes in that front court. Now we've got our guys like Jeremy Lamb, Marvin Williams, potentially Dwight Howard, Frank Kaminsky. These guys are all names that are likely going to get more minutes. So even though it's against a strong defense like the Boston Celtics, when guys are out, players have to play more minutes. That's production, so there's going to be some value on the Hornets tonight.
That's the one thing about Jeremy Lamb. He comes and puts up fantasy production every single time he's slotted into the starting lineup. And at 4,500, I think that's what the price was sitting at, you get a guy that has 30, 40, he's even shown 50-point upside this season. Yes, it's against a tough defensive team, but the floor is very high and reachable in this matchup. Then we have a guy like Marvin Williams that's under 4K, another guy that's able to hit his floor. So these are cash game viable options here.
A note on Dwight Howard as well, just sticking with that game. He is going to play in this one against the Celtics. Was injured in that game last night, left early, did come back though, so doesn't seem like anything that's of great concern. Whether you want to go after him in fantasy, that's another story.
Right, so Dwight Howard's going to play tonight, but do you trust him in a matchup against the Celtics after getting banged up last night? I probably wouldn't recommend Dwight Howard as a fantasy option, and it does make me like a guy like Marvin Williams a little bit more, even a Frank Kaminsky. because, you know, Dwight Howard, is he going to give the most effort? What if he gets banged up again tonight? So not that it necessarily gives those Hornets any upside, because Dwight Howard very well could finish out this game, but there's a little bit of potential for something to happen again, and then if you are rostering one of those Hornets, they become an even more valuable play for you.
Yep, agreed there. I just would not roll the dice on a large slate with Dwight Howard tonight.
As I mentioned, get your questions in Facebook Live or Twitter with the hashtag DKLive. We'll see them. We'll get them to these guys, give you some expertise, help you set those lineups. Because, again, a lot coming up in about 50 minutes. You do not want to be late because then you can't play. Time for narratives. Each of these guys has a couple. We're going to get reactions as well. But the narratives is an important segment. All of this show is important, but this area is a really good sort of building block for you to begin lineup construction, because it's all about where do I start? What are the things about tonight's slate, again, 9 games, that I need to know? You've been busy at work all day, theoretically anyway, and at least I hope you were being productive, so you haven't been paying attention to stuff. That's what these guys have been here for. They have been mining over the narratives all day long, the keynotes. So, Sherrod, give us a first.
My first narrative is consider Russell Westbrook over Anthony Davis tonight. Yes, Anthony Davis is coming off monster performance after monster performance after monster performance.
And Russ is not.
And Russ is not. And that's why I would consider Russell Westbrook in tournaments and even possibly cash games. You know the floor you're getting with him. The Mavericks are one of the worst defensive teams against point guards. They've been that way all season. Yogi Ferrell is the backup point guard. J.J. Barea is the backup point guard. Dennis Smith is the starting point guard. These guys cannot cover Russell Westbrook straight up. They'll need help. Wesley Matthews may move over, which will also open it up for then you have Paul George and the other guys going away getting Russell Westbrook's assist. So I believe the floor is extremely high for Russell Westbrook. The ceiling, we know what the guy is capable of. The other night, he missed a triple-double by 1 point. He almost had a triple-double with all those turnovers. But hey, you know what? Russell Westbrook tonight, with all the value that's available on the slate, I would look to start my lineup there for cash games and tournaments.
Support that?
Yeah, there's just so many studs on this slate, whether you have to pay up for Anthony Davis or Russell Westbrook or look down a couple $1,000s at some other guys. So the thing that turns me on to Russell Westbrook, I think he's strictly a GPP play on this slate. Typically Westbrook, a guy that you can feel really comfortable targeting in cash, but because of a couple down games, I don't feel that way tonight, and we've got a guy like Anthony Davis who will likely be more popular in cash games. So Anthony Davis, a cash game play. Russell Westbrook, I have no problem with him in GPPs because he has that elite ceiling, but with what we've been seeing lately, I wouldn't feel comfortable for the first time in a while forcing Russell Westbrook into a cash lineup.
All right, what's your first narrative?
My first narrative, I teased it a little bit earlier, the tanking teams. There are 8 teams tanking that we believe to be tanking in the NBA. Of those 8 teams, 7 of them have combined to lose 40 games in a row. The Dallas Mavericks, the only outlier, riding a red-hot one-game winning streak after Mark Cuban was fined $600,000
for telling his team
to tank pretty much on a podcast. So these teams do not want to win. There are 5 of them playing on tonight's slate. 2 of them I mentioned earlier, Memphis versus Phoenix. Unfortunately, somebody's got to win that game. They have to play this game, so I think there is some fantasy value to be had there. But the rest of the teams, the Raptors will play the Magic, the Pacers against the Hawks, and the Thunder against the Mavericks. Those teams don't want to win those games, so however you want to incorporate that, whether you want to target stars against the tanking teams if you think those games will stay close, or you want to go for some scrubs and think those games might be a blowout, just remember that we're in the home stretch now. These teams are going to be tanking, and that's going to mean something one way or another for fantasy value.
It's been a really interesting slate. When I looked at the point totals, projected point totals, we saw these couple games that were really close, and then you have these ones that are right under 10 points. Like, they're not in that blowout range, but they're also not in that range of where you're like, hey, you know what, it's a cash lock or a GPP lock kind of situation. So it's a slate where these tanking teams will provide value, and you have to look at, as you mentioned, that projected blowout possibility.
I mean, just to give an example there on that, you've got the Pacers playing at the Hawks. That's projected to be around a 5 or 6 point game. The Hawks are the worst team in the NBA defensively against the shooting guard position. So if that stays a close game and you've got Victor Oladipo there in a fantastic matchup, he should shred the Hawks apart. So that's just one way that you can look at targeting against a tanking team and find, a really good fantasy matchup on the opposite end.
Just don't want to pit two tanking teams against one another, because then
something's going to happen in that Memphis-Phoenix game.
Yeah,
somebody's going to score points.
Well, look, somebody's got to win, but it doesn't mean it's not going to be a low-scoring game, because I'm not saying people are outright shaving points, but if you're avoiding going your all, and I refuse to, just for the sake of a narrative on a narrative, front offices can tank, can encourage tanking, general managers. These players are not out there doing that. The coaches are not out there doing that in most cases anyway. But players most certainly not, because these guys have contracts on the line.
Well, to give you an example, just Devin Booker the other night. The Suns are tanking, but he goes completely 40, berserk. Right? Yeah. So it's a situation where, you know what, they might be tanking, but they might say, hey, you're our best player. Just take all the shots you want and get your numbers up, because now this is where your contracts come into play. This is where bonuses come into play. This is where games played come into play later on in the career. So it's a situation where, hey, take all the shots you want and do what you want to do, show off what you got. Just remember, last year, it was around this time when Devin Booker had that 70-point game against the Celtics. It wasn't early in the season. Right. It was one of the times when they were just like, go, you do your thing and you go. So it's a situation where sometimes there's opportunities in those tanking teams where they're just like, you're our best player right now, you do your thing.
All right, give me your second narrative.
My second narrative, Kevin Durant going back to Washington, his hometown. Got to check him out tonight. He's under $10,000. When he's faced the Wizards in the last 8 times that he's played over 30 minutes, it's a big situation here. I have to set it up, because the last time Kevin Durant played the Wizards in Washington, he was injured by a flop from Zaza. Zaza flopped right into his knee and had him ruled out for 6 weeks. But the last 8 times that Kevin Durant has played the Wizards, he scored over 49 fantasy points. I think it's a situation here where you're getting a guy that has another safe floor and also has a potential ceiling. Yes, he has not broken out like he did the other night on Valentine's Day against the Portland Trail Blazers when he scored his Warriors record, but he scored over 42 fantasy points since then. So it's a situation where you have the safety again of the floor, and you know the potential ceiling of your guy.
Judge, are they going to hurt anybody tonight?
You don't know, dude. Yeah. That guy just flops and knocks and does whatever he wants. Like, honestly, I'm glad JaVale McGee is starting, and now Jordan Bell is back in the rotation.
Wizard.
Yeah, former Wizard. You might get some revenge there for him too. Yep. But hey, Nick Young, Swaggy, former Wizard too. But just keep in mind, with Jordan Bell back in the lineup, Zaza Pachulia is going to get he was going 18, 20 minutes, he might play now 12 to 14.
So how do you feel about the hometown narrative?
Yeah, I think, Kevin Durant might have a little extra incentive playing in a game in his hometown. I'm not as much of I don't buy in as much to Narrative Street as Shrag usually does. But, I'll just carry this into my second narrative a little bit and say Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, all eyes are going to be on them in this slate. Like I said, Anthony Davis makes sense for cash. Russell Westbrook makes sense for GPPs. But if you're playing GPPs, I think you can look to fade both of these guys tonight and go to some guys' targets like Kevin Durant at 9,700. You've got Giannis Antetokounmpo, Andre Drummond, Victor Oladipo I mentioned, Chris Paul going up against his former team in the Clippers, KD and Steph in Washington. You've got Devin Booker, who we talked about, LaMarcus Aldridge in a good spot against the Pelicans. There are a lot of targets in the $8,000 to $10,000 range where you're not paying up to nearly $12,000, who are in equally as good of spots as Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis. So I think this is a kind of a slate where all eyes are going to be on these two studs. You got to build around one of them. Why not go the other way? Take a couple of these other guys, maybe even 3 of them in the $8,000 to $10,000 range. Build your GPP around them. You'll definitely be different, and those guys I feel like have just as good a potential as Davis and Westbrook.
I did some roster construction earlier today, and I noticed that I was able to fit in Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, and Chris Paul in the lineup with these values. So if he's mentioning the kind of balanced lineup approach as he's mentioning right now, in a sense, without paying up for Anthony Davis or Russell Westbrook, you don't get those value guys then, and you get guys that are consistent and that can hit the floor. So that's kind of why it works out, is because you get those guys that are now, maybe will they hit 20, maybe will they hit 30, or you have a guy that's a lock for 30, lock for 40.
I had somebody hit me up on Twitter the other day saying, at Adam M. Kaufman, just a cheap plug,
you don't need followers.
They were saying, so am I like the only one who's just not really buying in on Giannis? I said, Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you are the only one.
As a player or
as a
fantasy?
player? No, as a player,
Okay.
not a fantasy player.
Yeah,
as
no,
a
you're
player.
wrong.
Although it sounds like you're not necessarily totally 100% as a fantasy player, just based on that reaction.
He was overpriced there for a little while, like over $11,000, and given some games in the high 30s, low 40s in terms of fantasy production and DraftKings points. His price has come down as a result, and I like that.
Tonight. Yep.
He's in his last 4 games, I think he's had a 68 and a 77 DraftKings point game, so that ceiling is still there. He just carries a lower floor, I think, than a lot of the guys who are priced near him, even cheaper than him. Is he going to become more consistent? We've seen consistent stretches out of him in the past. I need to see him be a little more consistent to say, I want a guy like Giannis tonight over somebody who's playing like Anthony Davis in cash games.
Yeah, and the thing is with Giannis, too, is Jabari Parker is back in the rotation. He played 27 minutes last night. He's going to play tonight. Chris Middleton still shoots a bunch. Eric Bledsoe was brought over in a trade from Phoenix this year. He's also a scoring guard. There. Yeah, so that's what lowers his floor, is the fact that he doesn't have to carry this team completely. And then you have a situation where now, Thon Maker's not starting, John Henson is starting, so the rebounding upside also comes down for Giannis. So that's the reason why Giannis has somewhat of a different floor, but the ceiling is there, and the actual NBA skills as a true player, he's an all-star.
All right, so never mind questions for me. How about questions for these guys? Again, hashtag DK Live on Twitter or Facebook Live. Get them right in the comments section. We've got some already, so let's hit some of those, and then we'll move on to our anchors and values. First one from Bill. With Wallace out, do you think Milos, tell us something, is viable?
Teodosic. I do consider him viable, but I would prefer to run with Austin Rivers tonight. Austin Rivers is just slightly over 5,000 tonight. He scored over 25 fantasy points in 6 straight games. Stock Rivers' son. You know he's going to get the minutes. Also, keep in mind...
You know he wants to go against Chris Paul.
Yeah, and you know he wants to go against Chris Paul. Chris Paul's going to roast him, but he wants to go. And the thing is to look in that lineup. If you want a guard or a player from the Clippers, check out Wesley Johnson, 3,100. He started last night. Tyrone Wallace is probably out tonight, as they've mentioned. There's some conflicting reports on Tyrone Wallace, but Wesley Johnson likely to get to start again. He's going to be spending a lot of time on James Harden, and he might have to switch over to Chris Paul as well. So look at him instead of Milos.
Milos Teodosic is over $1,000 cheaper than Austin Rivers. So if you're asking about Milos Teodosic, although I like Austin Rivers, you probably can't afford Austin Rivers. So I do consider Milos Teodosic a viable option if you're looking there. If you need a guard in that price range, the only other guy I would look at is Yogi Ferrell. For those tanking Mavericks, look at his minutes lately, look at his production lately. He's been pretty solid. So Teodosic or Yogi Ferrell, if you need a guard in that low 4,000s price range, that's where I would look.
All right, let's get a couple more in, and then, of course, we'll move right along to, we'll bring in Geoff Ulrich in a little bit, too. Okay, from Alexander, good strategy to roster both Devin Booker and LaMarcus Aldridge tonight with Warren and Gasol potentially out.
Well, Paul Gasol is definitely out, so I do like rostering LaMarcus Aldridge if that's one of the stars you want to pay for. I mentioned there's so many studs who are kind of right in the same spot on this slate. LaMarcus Aldridge is one of those guys, upside against the Pelicans. So, yeah, I like that. TJ Warren, we don't know about yet. If he is out, like I said, somebody's going to do something in that Memphis-Phoenix game, so Devin Booker could be one of those guys coming off a big game.
Yeah, coming off a big game, and the thing is to look out for, if Warren is out, Josh Jackson has played really well at the start of the season, so you definitely want to consider him as well. But LaMarcus Aldridge, without Gasol, check out maybe Davis Bertans, who could slot into the starting lineup for Gasol, or also Joffrey Laverne if they want the size against Anthony Davis.
If you heard that scream, by the way, don't worry, nobody's hurt. Maybe having a little too much fun, but nobody's hurt. All right, let's go to our next question here. We'll get one more in, and then do some other stuff. All right, from Adam. Hey, guys, better stack. Pacers against the Hawks or Raptors against the Magic?
Tankathon, let me know what's up.
Well, I like the idea because either way, you're going against a tanking team, and that's the notion that I like. I'm going to say I don't feel there's that many plays that I love on the Raptors that much, so the Pacers there kind of by default. I like Victor Oladipo there more than I like necessarily stacking that game, though.
Yeah, something to consider also, Glenn Robinson III, he's 3,300. It's going to be his third game back from ankle injury, and the Atlanta Hawks are the worst team against small forwards, so you might also consider Bojan Bogdanovic there as well. If you want a Raptor, then you should consider Serge Ibaka in a revenge spot.
True.
All right, so like I said, get those questions in, hashtag DK Live on Twitter or Facebook Live in the comment section. Just to give you some lineup notes, again, Aaron Gordon is in, Dwight Howard is going to play, guys who are out, a couple of his teammates, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and Cody Zeller not going to play. You have Daniel Tice, DeAndre Bembry, Tyson Chandler, Pau Gasol, Ryan Anderson, Brandon Wright, Tyreek Evans, Deontay Davis, Chandler Parsons, Wayne Selden, Matthew Dellavedova, Tony Snell, Tyron Wallace, Danilo Gallinari, and Avery Bradley. They're all not going to play. Clint Capella, we are still waiting on, but he's probable. TJ Warren is among those questionable. Malcolm Delaney as well. But as teased, let's add a fourth member of the team here on NBA Prelock Live, presented by Wilder versus Ortiz Live on Showtime. That's Geoff Ulrich with us. He spent the entire show here with us on Monday with Chirag out, but obviously just a little too much, Geoff. So we've had to scale him back to his normal role as a take evaluator. How are you, pal?
Doing good. Thanks for that intro. It was awesome as always.
Yeah. All right, so the takes, they're going to relate to tonight's top anchor and value plays, Geoff. You know that. I'm going to run them down. Chirag and Julian, they're going to pitch their favorites. Geoff here is going to decide who's smarter. I mean, it's kind of like Shark Tank. We mentioned Mark Cuban earlier. It's like Shark Tank, but without the $1 million investors. Unless, of course, that's you out there watching. So, anchors, let's go right there. Anthony Davis, 11,700. Pelicans in San Antonio tonight. Davis has been stupid good since Boogie Cousins went down. 53 points, 18 boards against the Suns Monday. A total of 93 fantasy points. That is at least 60 DK points in 5 of his last 6 for Davis. Russell Westbrook, not exactly trending the right way. 11,300, OKC in Dallas. Russ has been quiet. His points have actually decreased each of his last 4 games. 70, robust, to 57, more than respectable, but down to 44 to then into the 30s. So he hasn't exactly been getting a lot of help around him either. He did, in fairness, go for 60 and 79 in previous meetings with the Mavs this year. Just something to think about. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 10,500, almost 70 fantasy points last game for the Bucks, and now he is in Detroit. 3 meetings against the Pistons this year, though, 40s every single time, and that is not real points, that's fantasy points. Last one on this list, Chris Paul, $8,300, has not reached 42 fantasy points any of his last 5 games, okay? He's visiting his old team, though, tonight, the Clippers. Narrative Street, only 40 against the Clips in a game last month. Just want to mention that. So who's going to go first? Make a pitch.
I'll start here with Chris Paul. You know, it's Narrative Street night. You know where it starts and you know where it ends.
It's Narrative Street night for you.
It's always Narrative Street. Yes,
it's always something.
Yeah. I love the nicknames. I love the narrative trails. Yeah. But, hey, you know what? Look at Chris Paul. Yes, you did mention that he scored under 42 fantasy points in the last 5 games. But it's not like he's actually been bad. It's the fantasy points have been there where you've been able to, have a serviceable roster with them. The upside is now there as well. That's the difference here tonight, is that Chris Paul going back to LA against his former team with a safe floor and a reachable ceiling. That's what we want to look at in a point guard matchup with so many different options on the slate. 8,300 for Chris Paul, that's a steal.
And he hates Austin Rivers.
Yes.
What do you think, Geoff?
Yeah, I'm down with Chirag and I'm down with Narrative Street. I mean,
oh wait, just wait a second. Wait a second. You can make your point. You can make your case. You can say you agree with him, but don't tell me that was an A+ argument.
I don't care about the argument. This isn't like a 12 Angry Men, Kaufman. Okay, this is about NBA here. Hey, look, 8,300. I look at this slate, and it's really hard to differentiate between the studs on this slate. I think going with a balanced approach is good, and that's why I really do like Chris Paul. 8,300. You got a matchup against Austin Rivers. You got Narrative Street going on too. This is probably the best matchup the Rockets have over, like in their starting 5, Paul versus Rivers. I think you got to take advantage of it on the slate because he's so cheap. And there is some question marks among the other studs. I know Anthony Davis is playing well, but I think you go balance tonight, and I think starting with Chris Paul is a great idea.
Okay, Julian?
All right, well, like Geoff said, it's really difficult to differentiate between the studs on this slate. So I don't have a hot take for you guys. I just have a lukewarm take. If you're playing GPPs...
way to sell it. Start writing that grade
Geoff
down.
said he doesn't care about the argument.
It's a curvy letter, Geoff.
He does not care about the argument.
Dash next to it.
If you're playing GPPs, go wild. Use your Andre Drummonds, your Victor Oladipos, your Chris Paul, your Giannis Antetokounmpo. Mix them up however you want and see how you do because there's not much of a difference tonight. However, I want to give the people something. The show is for the people. Help them out. So if you are playing cash games, Anthony Davis does differentiate himself because he's been so consistent lately. Yes, he's been getting all these 90 DK point games, and he's going up against the Spurs. So I'm not looking for 80, 90 DK points. His price, when do we get a guy that stays $11,700 one game after dropping 93 DraftKings points? That never happens. So even though he's going up against the Spurs, all we're asking for is 55 to 60 DraftKings points here, something he's definitely capable of. So all these other studs, we can scatter them all over the place, use them how you want in GPPs, go wild. But when you're playing cash games, Anthony Davis is the guy you have to put in your lineup.
Oh, man. I don't know. I'm going to give out a bad grade here. I'm going to take a stand.
Yes!
Oh, boy.
Yep, the Kirby letter with
I don't buy it.
Congrats, buddy, you passed.
It's just like high school.
$1,700 for Anthony Davis when he can pay down for Russell Westbrook against Dallas.
Pay down for Russell Westbrook?
The discount.
$400.
Yeah, but he's got a way better matchup. I mean, we're paying up for Anthony Davis against the Spurs. I know how well he's playing, but it's just too tough a matchup.
We're not paying up for Anthony Davis against the Spurs. Paying up for Anthony Davis against the Spurs would be if his price went up $1,000 as it should have after somebody scores 93 DK points. So his price, we're getting him at a discount
now. Don't you think, Julian, that part of the reason he didn't go up in price is because he's playing the Spurs, though? I mean, that's
exactly. That's why we're getting him at a discount. Normally, his salary would go up.
Okay.
I think let me just for a second. I think his point when he says paying up is he is the high price guy on the slate. You are paying up to get him, not necessarily paying up compared to what his value should be.
Because he's the only guy we can trust on this slate. That's why he's.
Doesn't sound like you trust him.
I just said I trust him.
But you don't really trust him. You don't trust him at that money.
I really trust him. I just think that people are.
Did I get lost in the lukewarm take somewhere?
You must have gotten lost in this lukewarm take somewhere. Look. Anthony Davis, no, the matchup against the Spurs will prevent him from getting 80 to 90 DraftKings points.
Correct.
As his recent game log is full of. But I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for 55 to 60. So if we keep him at the same price, $11,700, when normally after a big game like that, he should have skyrocketed in price, and we look for a reasonable outcome here in terms of DraftKings points, I think he's your cash game option. The rest of the guys, you can't differentiate between these studs, so go ahead, use them in GPPs. But Anthony Davis is the cash game play. I'm just gonna eat my D- here.
We already made the argument that Russell Westbrook does have a ceiling of over 70 fantasy points, and he's cheaper. So I don't know.
Well, I clearly said cash games here. Russell Westbrook has a great GPP ceiling. I'm not arguing that.
It's just it's a good thing you guys are separated.
I'm down an F for Julian's value play already.
separated by miles and continents.
I'm dropping this class.
All right, let's talk values. Jeremy Lamb, $4,500, at least 20 DK points each of his last 5 games, routinely turning around about 6 times value, and the Hornets continue to be banged up tonight in Boston, as we have noted. No Zeller, no Kid Gilchrist, and Howard's going to play, but who knows if he's a shell of himself. JaMychal Green. A little more expensive. You might even say paying up for him. $5,400. Minimum 34 fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 outings. Facing Phoenix tonight, looking for yet another double-double. 28 points against the Suns earlier this year, and that is DK points. CJ Williams, $3,200, matching up with the Rockets later, coming off of 2 good games. 23 points and 35 points. Again, we're talking fantasy. And Joffrey Laverne, 34 points, taking on the Pelicans. Very boom or bust. 45 fantasy points in Denver a couple weeks ago. Basically single digits most other nights. So, Julian, please impress Geoff. Go first. Who is your top value play tonight among those 4?
All right. Well, I mean, this is like when you're taking one of those tests in class and you already know that you're going to drop that class, so it really doesn't matter what happens. But JaMychal Green, $5,400, he's the guy that you need to go with tonight. I've been talking about that Memphis versus Phoenix game. Somebody's going to get minutes in there. JaMychal Green played 34 and 35 minutes in his last 2 games, respectively. He's scored 25 or more DraftKings points in 3 straight games. That includes 2 games of 34 or more DraftKings points. The Phoenix Suns, bad at defense, just allowed the 93 DraftKings point game to Anthony Davis, who apparently we don't care about on this slate because he gets D-minuses. But JaMychal Green, Phoenix Suns, terrible defense, great spot, and the little extra sprinkle on top of here that should get me a great grade, Marc Gasol might get scratched later. That would create a much bigger role for JaMychal Green.
See, Geoff, that was a good sound argument.
I think it's been
first you have to
predetermined
cross off
here
your
for me.
F.
Hit him with the D.
I'm definitely out of
And
here.
Look, I get the argument for JaMychal Green tonight. I'm totally against JaMychal Green. Why would I pay up for JaMychal Green when I can pay for Jarrell Wright, who's going to have almost the exact similar role?
At least get his name right, Geoff.
And he's only 4,400. Also, Josh Jackson at 5,700, in my opinion, especially if TJ Warren is out, is a better play anyways. So also Andrew Harrison at that price.
There go my notes.
I get a lot of people are on JaMychal Green. It's actually probably a contrarian thing I'm saying. I think there's better value out there than JaMychal Green tonight.
Nah.
JaMychal Green is solid.
Nah.
And originally,
Good counter.
You know what's funny is when we originally were going through the picks and setting up for the show, I had Jarrell Martin on there, and this guy didn't even acknowledge Jarrell Martin. He just wrote JaMychal Green as a value. He straight up didn't even accept that Jarrell Martin was listed in there.
Oh, obviously, had Geoff been working on it with you.
Yeah,
Jeff
would have went
Jeff
Jarrell
won't
Martin.
accept that his name's not Jarrell Wright.
He wants Brandon Wright back on the Memphis Grizzlies. That's what it is.
Must
Put
be it.
them together. All right, what do you got, Sherrod?
Cooking that lamb. Cook that lamb. That's what it is. You have to take Jeremy Lamb tonight. MKG has already been ruled out. Yes, this is a difficult matchup against the Boston Celtics, but we know what Jeremy Lamb does when he gets a starting nod. He plays 30 minutes, scores over 30 fantasy points, and if he does not, all you need is like 22 to 25 from him tonight, and you'll be set. So look at him in all formats tonight, Jeremy Lamb, for your value play.
Oh, there's an A coming. There's an A coming. I can feel it.
All right.
Yeah!
But I mean, you have to agree. Look, there's no MKG. Jeremy Lamb, obviously, when he gets inserted into, he's got a history of playing well. I know the matchup is tough, which doesn't make it like an A++, but I'd still at 4,500. I feel like he brings better upside. I feel like he's even probably better upside than Jarrell Wright there. And just to go back to that argument, just in all seriousness for people watching, it is a great game to target.
To it.
I still would say there's better. You got to pick and choose carefully. But that is a good game to target. So don't get off all the Memphis guys just because I put down one of them. But I do think you got to pick and choose.
This is clearly rigged. I don't know what's going on here.
But you know what the honesty is here is when you make good picks, you get good grades.
Yeah, you get rewarded.
Yeah.
All right, well,
That's what it is.
mean, JaMychal Green and Anthony Davis better have bad nights tonight. Otherwise, Jeff's going to hear it on Twitter.
Yeah.
All I know is that Jarrell Wright better outscore JaMychal
There
Green.
is no Jarrell Wright, Jeff.
It's Jarrell Martin.
Jarrell Martin is the guy's name. Jarrell Wright does not exist.
He doesn't exist.
Jarrell Martin better outscore JaMychal Green tonight.
I'm over here getting D-minuses. Jeff's over there making up players. No repercussions.
He's basically the teacher in, Key and
The
Peele
names are
right
down.
now. just inventing names. Let's take some questions, all right? Hashtag DK Live on Twitter or Facebook Live in the comments section. Please, let's just get to them. From Steve, Irving tonight. Kyrie is averaging about 26 real points per game his last handful.
Yes, Kemba Walker defense, and we've got studs that are kind of even leveled here. So if Kyrie Irving's one of the guys that you want to go after in GPPs amongst a slew of names, go for it.
I agree with Kyrie Irving, yes, but also, you know what, keep in mind that there's a lot of other point guards on the slate, so what you want to do is lock in your value and then see what point guard slot fills in correctly.
True.
Okay, next. We can wait. Melo has been in a slump, so do you feel like picking him for cash? From Mark.
No, you don't do that. You don't pick him for cash. Melo is not a cash game player. He's very reliant on scoring and the fact that Steven Adams is the rebounding guy on that side. You know what? I saw a really interesting stat on this mentioning Carmelo. He doesn't have the rebounding upside, and Steven Adams averages more offensive rebounds per game than he does defensive rebounds per game. So that means Russell Westbrook swooping in, getting those defensive rebounds, and Steven Adams swooping in, getting those offensive rebounds, leaving Melo just at three-point line chucking.
Yeah, I mean, Melo's been slumping all season. That's not a player that you want in cash, so can't go there.
Okay.
Definitely play Steven Adams today, though. That is a great play.
Right after Jarrell Wright. Next question. That guy. Can you play Clippers value in cash, C.J. Williams or Wesley Johnson from Max?
Yeah, you can play both of these guys in cash. I think a lot of teams, once you get down to that value, because people will be playing Anthony Davis in cash, it means that you need a value. So one of these guys is definitely going to be in a good spot with all the Clippers that are out.
I'd prefer Wesley Johnson over CJ Williams just because CJ's working his way back from injury, so he might be a little bit rusty, but Wesley Johnson started the other night. He has that 30-minute and 20 to 30-point fantasy upside.
Okay, moving right along. We're with you for a few more minutes, and then we'll leave you to set your lineups with all this expertise at your disposal. Need a center under 4,200 from Justine.
Oh, boy. Need the slate in front of me for that.
Center in front
Anybody
of me.
off the top of your
yes,
head?
I got a center for you. His name is King Joffrey Laverne.
Yep.
There it is, 3,400. King Joffrey is, I have a feeling he's going to play tonight because they don't want to use LaMarcus Aldridge on Anthony Davis that much. They need LaMarcus to score the points. They bring a big guy in, Joffrey Laverne, and he's the one that's going to, he might not start. Davis Bertans might start, but I think Joffrey Laverne is the punk guy that's already in my lineup.
Yeah,
I don't hate Dragon Bender at 4K either. Memphis actually isn't that good against big guys, especially if Gasol's out.
Listen, you want to talk about the Dragon, man?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Well, he did. Now, what do you got?
I mean, Joffrey Laverne makes sense. If it doesn't have to be a center, you shouldn't have your center position left over on this slate. I think there's a lot of good options. So if you're going to value on your center, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. So if you need somebody under 4,200, I think with the Hornets injury news, Marvin Williams is the guy that appears to me eligible at both forward spots, and you can look to pay for one of these studs at center.
Okay, a couple more questions. From Luke, what about Lance?
Lance going to make him dance tonight against Atlanta?
I doubt it.
No, but the thing is, like I mentioned, Atlanta is one of the worst teams against small forwards. And what
Small
position
forward
does
shooting guard, he plays a combo of those.
Yep, and that's the reason why Lance is viable. But on a slate this size, I don't know if I see Lance as a GPP winning player. That's the thing, where he could work out, and I would not put him in cash, but he's viable because of the matchup tonight.
Yeah, it's definitely a bold move, but if you like the matchup, that's how you can
saw what
skyrocket
Brandon
to the
Ingram
top
did.
of a GPP. So Lance Stevenson definitely has the ability to go nuts on, a certain slate, and he's got the matchup in his favor. So if that's what you want to do, go for it.
Okay, one more question. Who's the big one? From Don, Jabari Parker, yes or no?
I would like to get on the Jabari train. It was chucking along, but the Jabari train, it's not leaving the tracks tonight. I'm going to have to stay off the jabs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Jabari Parker for the rest of the season. He's still cheap. He's only going to get better coming back from that ACL injury. So, I'm very encouraged by him. But on the second night of a back-to-back, in the early stages of returning from that injury, I'm not sure I want to go there.
Correct.
I do want to add, guys, that T.J. Warren has been downgraded to doubtful. Jackson will start if, in fact, he does not play. So what does that do for you?
Lock in Devin Booker, because he's going to get all the usage tonight, and then consider Josh Jackson.
Devin Booker, Josh Jackson, those are probably your guys right there.
Yeah, Alex Len's probably going to start again.
Contrarian, but
yeah.
Those are the guys.
There.
Let's get some final thoughts. Jeff, we kick it back to you. What do you got? What's the big note for you on tonight's slate?
Don't do anything that Julian told you.
I knew that was coming.
No, I'm just kidding. But no, definitely, I like targeting that Memphis-Phoenix game. Hopefully, I wish T.J. Warren would have been downgraded to actually out. But like I said, I do like Josh Jackson. Alex Len is due for a bounce-back game, too. I just like targeting that game in general. There's a lot of value there. Andrew Harrison, we didn't even talk about. Guys mentioned Devin Booker, but that's a good game to go to tonight.
Yeah, just to rehash, I actually agree with Geoff. I said off the top, I really like that Memphis-Phoenix game, and now with the T.J. Warren news, there's only more to like. Keep an eye out for Marc Gasol. We don't know anything there, but there's a chance that this is a game that he might not go in. And then target against the tank teams. Like I said off the top, we've got the Raptors playing against the Magic, we've got the Pacers playing against the Hawks, and we have the Thunder playing against the Mavericks. Those three teams that I mentioned are not trying, so the teams going against them are probably going to do pretty well.
Final thoughts here. Check out DK Playbook. We got our boy Julian on here. We got Zach and also Tim Finnegan. They put up great content every single day, and if you're not able to go back and watch the show right away, click on DK Playbook and check out their plays because they got the fire every night.
I like that.
I like that plug.
Pushing for page views. All right. Well, this of course, has been NBA Pre-Lock Live, presented by Wilder versus Ortiz, live on Showtime. We're going to have another show on Friday. Again, it's Monday,
right
Wednesday, Friday. I mean, you could see.
Me and Geoff apparently have a cage match set up now. It'll be this weekend.
All right, quit staring off screen. Let's end this show. Go back, relive this thing on Facebook Live, at least the fun parts and the knowledge, and help you set your lineups and all that, because you have got 17 minutes until lock. Go lock it in. We'll talk to you later.
All right.